Chapter 2. Collection of all the Dharmas. At that time Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who has visited all the Buddha lands, together with all the Bodhisattvas, rose from his seat by the power of the Buddhas, drawing his upper garment over one shoulder, placing his right knee on the ground, and with folded hands, turning in the direction of the Bhagavan, respectfully saluted him, and praised him with the following verses. As thou reviewest the world with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, it is to thee like an ethereal flower, of which one cannot say whether it is born or destroyed, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to it. As thou reviewest all things with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, they are to thee like visions, they are beyond the reach of intellectual grasp, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to them. As thou reviewest thy world with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, it is to thee always like a dream, of which one cannot say whether it is permanent or destructible, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to it. In the Dharmakaya, whose self-nature is like a vision or a dream, what is there to praise? When no thought arises as to existence or as to not having self-nature, then there is praise. Of a thing whose appearance is not visible because of its being beyond the senses and their objects, how can it be praised or blamed, O Muni? With thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, which are above form, thou comprehendest the egolessness of things and persons, and art thyself always clean and free from the hindrances of passion and knowledge. Thou dost not vanish in nirvana, nor is nirvana abiding in thee, for it transcends the duality of knowing and known, and of being and non-being. Those who see the Muni so serene and beyond birth and death will be cleansed of attachment, stainless both in this world and in the other. At that time Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, praising the Bhagavan with such verses as these, made his own name known to the Bhagavan. I am Mahamati, Bhagavan, and am well versed in the Mahayana. I wish to ask 108 questions of thee, who art most eloquent. Hearing his words, the Buddha, the best knower of the world, looking over the whole assembly, spoke to the son of the Shagata thus, Ask me, sons of the victorious and Mahamati, you ask and I will instruct you in self-realization. At that moment Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who was given by the Bhagavan the opportunity to speak, prostrated himself at the feet of the Bhagavan and asked, How can one be cleansed of false intellection? Whence does it arise? How can one perceive errors? Whence do they arise? Whence come lands, transformation, appearance, and philosophers? Wherefore is the state of imagelessness, the gradations, and whence are born the sons of the victorious? Where is the way of emancipation? Who is in bondage? By what is he redeemed? What is the mental state of those who practice the dhyanas? Whence is the triple vehicle? What is that which is born of causation? What is effect? What is cause, or that which works? Whence the doctrine of duality? Whence does it arise? Wherefore is the tranquilizing exercise of formlessness, and that of complete extinction? Wherefore the extinction of thoughts, and how is one awakened from it? How does action arise? Whence is the behavior of those who hold the body? Whence this visible world? Whence the conditions? Whence the entrance upon the stages? Who is it that breaks through this triple existence? What is the abode? What is the body? Where does that which is abiding arise? Whence comes the son of the Buddha? Who attains the psychic faculties, the self-masteries, the samadhis? How is the mind tranquilized? Pray tell me, O bull-like victor. What is the alaya, and whence the mano vijnana? How does the visible world rise? How does it cease from being visible? Whence are families and no families? What is meant by mind only? The setting up of marks, and whence the doctrine of egolessness? Why is there no being? What kind of teaching is in accordance with popular thinking? How can one cease cherishing eternalism and nihilism? How is it that you do not differ from the philosophers as regards appearance? Tell me, whence is the rise of the Nyaya school, its future? What is meant by emptiness? What do you understand by the momentary destruction? Whence is the womb? and whence is the stability of the world? Why is the world like a vision and a dream? How does it resemble the city of the Gandharvas? Why is it to be regarded as like a mirage, or like the moon reflected in water? Pray tell me. What are the elements of enlightenment? Whence are the constituents of enlightenment? Wherefore is a revolution and the disturbance of a kingdom? And how does the realistic view of existence take its rise? What is meant by the world being above birth and death, or being like a flower in the air? How do you understand it? Why do you regard it as being beyond words? How is it not subject to discrimination? How is it like the sky? Of how many sorts is suchness? How manifold is the mind? How many paramitas are there? Whence is the gradation of the stages? What is the state of imagelessness? Wherefore is the twofold egolessness? How is one cleansed of the hindrance of knowledge? How many kinds of knowledge is there, jhana, O leader? How many moral precepts are there, and forms of being? Whence are the families born of gold and jewel and pearl? Of whom is speech born? Whence is the differentiation of beings? Whence are the sciences, offices, arts, and by whom are they made manifest? Of how many sorts are the gathas? What is prose? What is meter? Of how many sorts is reasoning and exercises? How many varieties of food and drink are there? Whence does sexual desire originate? Whence are there kings, sovereigns, and provincial rulers? How does a king protect his dominion? Of how many groups are heavenly beings? Whence are the earth, stars, constellations, the moon, and the sun? How many kinds of emancipation are there? Of the yogins? How many kinds of discipleship? And how about the masters? How many kinds of Buddhahood are there? And how many of the Jataka tales? How numerous are the evil ones? How numerous are the heretics? What is meant by the doctrine that there is nothing but thought construction? Pray tell me, thou most eloquent one. Whence are the clouds in the sky, the wind? What is meant by recollection, by wisdom? Whence are the trees and vines? Pray tell me, Lord of the triple world. How do horses, elephants, and deer get caught? Wherefore are there fools and despicable people? Pray tell me, thou charioteer of the mind. Wherefore are the 6 seasons mentioned? What is meant by the Ichantika, or one who is without Buddha nature? Pray tell me, whence is the birth of a man, of a woman, of a hermaphrodite? How does one retrograde in the yoga exercises? How does one make progress in them? How many exercises are there, and how are men kept abiding in them? Pray tell me. Beings are born in the various paths of existence. What are their specific marks and forms? How is abundance of wealth acquired? Pray tell me, thou who art like the sky. Whence is the Sakya family, and the one born of Ishvaku? Whence is the Rishi long penance? What is taught by him? How is it that thou art thus apparent everywhere in every land, surrounded by such bodhisattvas of various names and forms? Why is meat not to be eaten? Why is it forbidden? Whence was the carnivorous race born who eats meat? Why are the lands shaped like the moon, the sun, the Sumeru, the lotus, the swastika, and the lion? Pray tell me. Wherefore are the lands shaped like a capsized and upturned net of Indra, which is composed of all sorts of jewels? Pray tell me why. Wherefore are the lands shaped in the form of a lute or a drum, like various flowers and fruits, like the sun and the moon, which are so stainless? Pray tell me. Whence are the Buddhas of transformation? Whence are the Buddhas of maturity or recompense? Whence are the Buddhas who are endowed with transcendental knowledge of suchness? Pray tell me. Why does one not attain enlightenment in the world of desire? Pray tell me. What is the meaning of your being enlightened in the Akanishta by shaking off all the passions? After my passing, who will be the upholder of the discipline? How long should the teacher abide? How long should the teaching continue? How many sorts of established truths are there, and how many of philosophical views? Whence is morality, and what constitutes the being of a bhikshu? Pray tell me. What is meant by the state of revulsion or turning back? Whence is a state of imagelessness which is realized by the protected Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Sravakas? By whom are the psychic powers of this world attained? What are the superworldly ones? By what means does the mind enter upon the 7 stages? Pray tell me. How many kinds of brotherhood are there? And how does this ascension take place in a brotherhood? Whence are medical treatises for beings? Pray tell me. You say that you were among the Buddhas Kasyapa, Krakuchanda, and Kana Kamuni. Tell me wherefore so, O great Muni. Whence is the doctrine that there is no ego soul in beings? Whence is the doctrine of eternity and of annihilation? Wherefore do you not everywhere announce the doctrine of mind only as the truth? What is meant by the forest of men and women, and by the forest of Karitaki and Amali? Whence are the mountains Kaisalasa, Chakravada, and Vajrasamarana? Among these, whence are the mountains decorated with various sorts of jewels and filled with rishis and Gandharvas? Pray tell me. Hearing this, which constitutes the wonderful doctrine of the Mahayana, and also the most excellent heart of the Buddhas, the great hero, the Buddha, the one most excelled in the knowledge of the world, spoke thus. Well done, O Mahaprajna Mahamati. Listen well, and I will tell you in order regarding your questions. Birth, no birth, nirvana, emptiness, transmigration, having no self-nature, Buddhas, sons of the Paramitas, the Sravakas, Bodhisattvas, the philosophers, those who are capable of formless deeds, the Meru, oceans, mountains, islands, lands, the earth, the stars, the sun, the moon, the philosophers, the Asura, emancipations, the self-masteries, the psychic faculties, the dhyanas, the samadhis, the extinctions, the supernatural powers, the elements of enlightenment and the paths, dhyanas, the unmeasurables, the aggregates, skandhas, and the comings and goings, samapatis, the extinctions, the stirrings of mind, explanations in words, the sita, manas and vijnanas, egolessness, the 5 dharmas, self-nature, the discriminating, the discriminated, the visible world, dualism, whence are they, various forms of vehicles, families, those born of gold, jewels, and pearls, the Inchantika, the original elements, the wandering about, one Buddhahood, knowledge, the known, the marching, the attainment, in the existence and non-existence of beings. How are horses, elephants, deer caught? Pray tell me how. What is a proposition, a teaching established by the conjunction of reason and illustration? Whence is cause and effect, various errors, and also reason? Why the statement that there is nothing but mind, that there is no objective, literally seen world, that there is no ascending of the stages? Whence is the state of imagelessness and revulsion which is 100-fold? You tell me. Likewise about medical treatises, arts, crafts, sciences, and teachings. And also what are the measurements of the mountains, Sumeru, and the earth? What are the measurements of the ocean, moon, and sun? Tell me. How many particles of dust are there in a body of a being? How many of the coarser ones, of the finer ones, and of the middle ones? How many particles of dust in every land? How many in every danva? In measuring distance, how much is a hasta, a danu, a krosa, a yojana, a half yojana? How many of rabbit hairs, of window dusk, louse eggs, or ram hairs, or barley? How many grains of barley in a prasta? How many grains of barley in a half prasta? Likewise, how many in a drona, in a karya, in a laksha, a koti, a bimbana? How many atoms are there in a mustard seed? How many mustard seeds are there in a rakshika? How many in a bean, in a dharana, in a mashaka? How many dharanas are there in a karsha? How many karshas in a pala? And how many palas are there in Mount Sumeru, which is a huge accumulation of masses? You should ask me thus, O son. Why do you ask me otherwise? How many atoms are there in the body of a Pratyekabuddha, of a Saravaka, of a Buddha, and of a Bodhisattva? Why do you not ask me in this wise? How many atoms are there at the top of a flame? How many atoms are there in the wind? How many in each sense organ? How many in a pore of the skin, in the eyebrows? Whence are these men of immense wealth, kings, great sovereigns? How is the kingdom taken care of by them? And how about their emancipation? Tell whence is prose and meter? Why is sexual desire universally cherished? Whence is the variety of food and drinks? Whence the man-woman forest? Wherefore are the mountains of Vajra Samhana? Tell me whence, wherefore, are they like a vision, a dream, and a fata morgana? Whence is the arising of clouds, and whence do the seasons rise? Whence is the nature of taste? Whence is woman, man, and hermaphrodite? Whence are the adornments and the bodhisattvas? Ask me, O my son. Whence are the divine mountains embellished by the rishis and gandharvas? Whence is the way of emancipation? Who is in bondage? By whom is he delivered? What is the state of one who practices tranquilization? What is transformation, and who are those philosophers? What is meant by non-existence, existence, and no effect? Whence arises the visible world? How can one be cleansed of false intellection? Whence does false intellection arise? Whence arises action, and whence its departure? Tell me, how does the extinction of thought take place, and what is meant by a samadhi? Who is the one that breaks through the triple world? What is the position? What is the body? Wherefore the doctrine that beings have no ego-soul? What is meant by a teaching in accordance with the world? Do you ask me about the marks? Do you ask me about egolessness? Do you ask me about the womb, about the Nyaya philosophers, O son of the victor? How about eternalism and nihilism? How is the mind tranquilized? Again, how about speech, knowledge, morality, family, O son of the victor? What is meant by reasoning and illustrating, by master and disciple, by manifoldness of beings, food and drink, sky, intelligence, evil ones, and the statement that there is nothing but the thought constructed? What do you ask me concerning trees and vines, O son and the victor of the victor? What about diversity of lands, and about long penance, the rishi? What is your family? Who is your master? You tell me, O son of the victor. Who are the people who are despised? How is it that in yoga you do not attain enlightenment in the world of desire, but in that in the akantishta there is realization? What do you ask me about reasoning? What about the psychic faculties belonging to this world, and about the nature of a bhikshu? Do you ask me about Buddhas of transformation, Buddhas of maturity or recompense, about Buddhas of the knowledge of suchness, and whence is the bodhisattva? You ask me, O son of the victor, about lands that are devoid of light, resembling a lute, a drum, and a flower, and about the mind abiding in the 7 stages. You ask me such and many other questions which are in accordance with the marks of truth and free from erroneous views. I will instruct you as regards realization and its teaching. Listen to me intently. I will give you an explanation of the statements, O son. Listen to me in regard to the 108 statements as recounted by the Buddhas. At that moment Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to the Bhagavan, What is meant by the 108 statements? The Bhagavan said, A statement concerning birth is no statement concerning birth. A statement concerning eternity is no statement concerning eternity. The topics thus negated are as follows: the characteristic marks, abiding and changing, moment, self-nature, emptiness, annihilation, mind; the middle, permanence, causation, cause, the passions, desire, means, contrivance, purity, inference or conclusion, illustration, a disciple, a master, a family, the triple vehicle, imagelessness, vows, the triple circle, form, duality of being and non-being, boldness, the noble wisdom of self-realization, the bliss of the present world, lands, atoms, water, a bow, reality, numbers and mathematics, the psychic powers, the sky, clouds, the arts and crafts and sciences, the wind, the earth, thinking, thought constructions, self-nature, the aggregates, being, insight, nirvana, that which is known, the philosophers, disorder, a vision, a dream, a mirage, a reflection, a circle made in the dark by a firebrand, the city of the Gandharvas, the heavens, food and drink, sexuality, philosophical views, the paramitas, morality, the moon and the sun and the stars, truth, effect, annihilation and origination, medical treatment, the characteristic marks, the limbs, arts and sciences, dhyana, error, the seen world, protection, dynasty, rishi, kingdom, apprehension, treasure, explanation, the ishantika, man, woman, and hermaphrodite, taste, action, the body, false intellection, motives and sense organs, the samskrita, cause and effect, the kanistha, the seasons, a luxuriant growth of trees, vines, and shrubs, multiplicity entering into the teaching, systems of morality, the bhikshus, the powers added by the Buddha, the lutes. These are the 108 statements recounted by the Buddhas of the past. At that moment, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said again to the Bhagavan, "In how many ways, Bhagavan, does the rise, abiding, and ceasing of the Vijnanas take place?" The Bhagavan replied, "There are 2 ways, Mahamati, in which the rise, abiding, and ceasing of the Vijnanas take place, and this is not understood by the philosophers. That is to say, the ceasing takes place as regards continuation and form. In the rise of the Vijnanas also these 2 are recognizable, the rise as regards continuation and the rise as regards form. In the abiding also these 2 are discernible, the one taking place as regards continuation and the other as regards form. Further, 3 modes are distinguishable in the Vijnanas, the Vijnanas as evolving, the Vijnana as producing effects, and the Vijnana as remaining in its original nature. Further, Mahamati, in the Vijnanas, which are said to be 8, 2 functions generally are distinguishable, the perceiving and the object discriminating. As a mirror reflects forms, Mahamati, the perceiving Vijnana perceives objects. Mahamati, between the 2, the perceiving Vijnana and the object discriminating Vijnana, there is no difference. They are mutually conditioning. Then Mahamati, the perceiving Vijnana, functions because of transformations taking place in the mind by reason of a mysterious habit energy, while Mahamati, the object discriminating Vijnana, functions because of the mind's discriminating an objective world and because of the habit energy accumulated by erroneous reasoning since beginningless time. Again, Mahamati, by the cessation of all the sense Vijnanas is meant the cessation of the alaya Vijnanas variously accumulating habit energy, which is generated when unrealities are discriminated. This, Mahamati, is known as the cessation of the form aspect of the Vijnanas. Again, Mahamati, the cessation of the continuation aspect of the Vijnanas takes place in this wise. That is to say, Mahamati, when both that which supports the Vijnanas and that which is comprehended by the Vijnanas ceases to function. By that which supports the Vijnanas is meant the habit energy or memory, which has been accumulated by erroneous reasoning since beginningless time, and by that which is comprehended by the Vijnanas is meant the objective world, perceived and discriminated by the Vijnanas, which is, however, no more than mind itself. Mahamati, it is like a lump of clay and the particles of dust making up its substance. They are neither different nor not different. Again, it is like gold and various ornaments made of it. If, Mahamati, the lump of clay is different from its particles of dust, no lump will ever come out of them. But as it comes out of them, it is not different from the particles of dust. Again, if there is no difference between the 2, the lump will be indistinguishable from its particles. Even so, Mahamati, if the evolving Vijnana are different from the alaya Vijnana, even if in its original form, the alaya cannot be their cause. Again, if they are not different, the cessation of the evolving Vijnanas will mean the cessation of the alaya Vijnana, but there is no cessation of its original form. Therefore, Mahamati, what ceases to function is not the alaya in its original self-form, but is the effect-producing form of the Vijnanas. When this original self-form ceases to exist, then there will indeed be the cessation of the alaya Vijnana. If, however, there is the cessation of the alaya Vijnana, this doctrine will in no wise differ from the nihilistic doctrine of the philosophers. This doctrine, Mahamati, as it is held by the philosophers, is this. When the grasping of an objective world ceases, the continuation of the Vijnanas is stopped. And when there is no more of this continuation in the Vijnanas, the continuation that has been going on since beginningless time is also destroyed. Mahamati, the philosophers maintain that there is a first cause from which continuation takes place. They do not maintain that the I Vijnana arises from the interaction of form and light. They assume another cause. What is this cause, Mahamati? Their first cause is known as spirit, pradhana, soul, purusha, lord, Isvara, time, or atom. Again, Mahamati, there are 7 kinds of self-nature: collection, being, characteristic marks, elements, causality, conditionality, and perfection. Again, Mahamati, there are 7 kinds of first principle, or highest reality, paramartha: the world of thought, the world of knowledge, the world of superknowledge, prajna, the world of dualistic views, the world beyond dualistic views, the world beyond the bodhisattva stages, and a world where the Tathagata attains his self-realization. Mahamati, this is the self-nature, the first principle, the essence, which constitutes the being of the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones of the past, present, and future, whereby perfecting things of this world and of the world beyond this, they, by means of a noble eye of transcendental wisdom, enter into various phases of existence, individual and general, and establish them. And what is thus established by them is not to be confused with the erroneous teachings generally held by the philosophers. Mahamati, what are these erroneous teachings generally accepted by the philosophers? Their error lies in this, that they do not recognize an objective world to be of mind itself, which is erroneously discriminated, and not understanding the nature of the vijnanas, which are also no more than manifestations of mind, like simple-minded ones that they are. They cherish the dualism of being and non-being, where there is but one self-nature and one first principle. Again, Mahamati, my teaching consists in the cessation of sufferings arising from the discrimination of the triple world, in the cessation of ignorance, desire, deed, and causality, and in the recognition that an objective world, like a vision, is the manifestation of mind itself. Mahamati, there are some Brahmins and Sramanas who assume something out of nothing, saying that there exists a substance which is bound up in causation and abides in time, and that the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas have their genesis and continuation in causation and, after thus existing, pass away. They are those, Mahamati, who hold a destructive and nihilistic view concerning such objects as continuation, activity, rising, breaking up, existence, nirvana, the path, karma, fruition, and truth. Why? Because they have not attained an intuitive understanding of the truth, because they have no fundamental insight of things. Mahamati, it is like a jar broken in pieces which is unable to function as a jar. Again, it is like a burnt seed which is incapable of sprouting. Even so, Mahamati, their skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, which they regard as subject to changes, are really incapable of uninterrupted transformation, because their views do not originate from the perception of an objective world as a manifestation of mind itself, which is erroneously discriminated. If, again, Mahamati, something comes out of nothing, and there is the rise of the vijnanas by reason of a combination of the three effect-producing causes, we can say the same of a non-existing thing, that a tortoise would grow hair and sands produce oil. As this is impossible, this proposition does not avail. It ends in affirming nothing. And, Mahamati, it follows that deed, work, and cause of which they speak will be of no use, and so also with their reference to being and non-being. Mahamati, when they argue that there is a combination of the three effect-producing causes, they do this by the principle of cause and effect, which is to say by the principle that something comes out of something and not of nothing. And thus there are such things as past, present, and future, and being and non-being. As long as they remain on their philosophic ground, their demonstration will be by means of their logic and textbooks, for the memory of erroneous intellection will ever cling to them. Thus, Mahamati, simple-minded ones, poisoned by an erroneous view, declare the incorrect way of thinking taught by the ignorant to be the one presented by the all-knowing one. Again, Mahamati, there are some Brahmins and Sramanas who, recognizing that the external world, which is of mind itself, is seen as such owing to the discrimination and false intellection practiced since beginningless time, know that the world has no self-nature and has never been born. It is like a cloud, a ring produced by a firebrand, the castle of the Gandharvas, a vision, a mirage, the moon as reflected in the ocean, and a dream. That mind in itself has nothing to do with discrimination and causation, discourses of imagination and terms of qualification. That body, property, and abode are objectifications of the alaya vijnana, which is in itself above the dualism of subject and object. That the state of imagelessness, which is in compliance with the awakening of mind itself, is not affected by such changes as arising, abiding, and destruction. The Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, Mahamati, will before long attain to the understanding that nirvana and samsara are one. Their conduct, Mahamati, will be in accordance with the effortless exhibition of a great loving heart that ingeniously contrives means of salvation, knowing that all beings have the nature of being like a vision or a reflection, and that there is only one thing which is not bound by causation, being beyond the distinction of subject and object, and further, seeing that there is nothing outside mind, and in accordance with the position of unconditionality. They will by degrees pass through the various stages of bodhisattvahood, and will experience the various states of samadhi, and will by virtue of their faith understand that the triple world is of mind itself, and thus understanding will attain the samadhi mayopama. The bodhisattvas entering into the state of imagelessness, where they see into the truth of mind only, arriving at the abode of the paramitas, and keeping themselves away from the thought of genesis, deed, and discipline, they will attain the samadhi vajra bimbopama, which is in compliance with the Tathagatagarbha and with the transformations of suchness. After achieving a revulsion in the abode of the Vijnanas Mahamati, they will gradually realize the Tathagatagarbha, which is endowed with the powers, the psychic faculties, self-control, love, compassion, and means, which can enter into all Buddha lands and into the sanctuaries of the philosophers, and which is beyond the realm of the Shita Mano Vijnana. Therefore, Mahamati, these Bodhisattva Mahasattvas who wish, by following the Tathagatagarbha, to realize it, should exercise themselves, in compliance with the truth of mind only, to desist from discriminating and reasoning erroneously on such notions as skandhas, dhatus, ayatanas, thought, causation, deed, discipline, and rising, abiding, and destruction. Perceiving that the triple existence is by reason of the habit energy of erroneous discrimination and false reasoning that has been going on since beginningless time, and also thinking of the state of Buddhahood, which is imageless and unborn, the Bodhisattva will become thoroughly conversant with the noble truth of self-realization, will become a perfect master of his own mind, will conduct himself without effort, will be like a gem reflecting a variety of colors, will be able to assume the body of transformation, will be able to enter into the subtle minds of all beings, and, because of his firm belief in the truth of mind only, will, by gradually ascending the stages, become established in Buddhahood. Therefore, Mahamati, let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva be well disciplined in self-realization. Then Mahamati said, Teach me, Bhagavan, concerning that most subtle doctrine which explains the Sita, Manas, Manovijnana, the five Dharmas, the Svabhavas, and the Lakshanas, which is put in practice by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which is separated from the state of mind which recognizes a world as something outside mind itself, and which, breaking down all the so-called truths established by words and reasonings, constitutes the essence of the teachings of all Buddhas. Pray teach this assembly headed by the Bodhisattvas gathering on Mount Malaya in the city of Lanka. Teach them regarding the Dharmakaya, which is praised by the Tathagatas, and which is the realm of the Alaya Vijnana, which resembles the ocean with its waves. Then the Bhagavan, again speaking to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this: The reasons whereby the I consciousness arises are four. What are they? They are: 1. The clinging to an external world, not knowing that it is of mind itself. 2. The attaching to form and habit energy accumulated since beginningless time by false reasoning and erroneous views. 3. The self-nature inherent in the Vijnana. 4. The eagerness for multiple forms and appearances. By these four reasons, Mahamati, the waves of the evolving Vijnanas are stirred on the Alaya Vijnana, which resembles the waters of a flood. The same can be said of the other sense consciousnesses as of the I consciousness. This consciousness arises at once or by degrees in every sense organ, including its atoms and pores of the skin. The sense field is apprehended like a mirror reflecting objects, like the ocean swept over by the wind. Mahamati, similarly, the waves of the mind ocean are stirred uninterruptedly by the wind of objectivity. Cause, deed, and appearance condition one another inseparably. The functioning Vijnanas and the original Vijnana are thus inextricably bound up together, and because the self-nature of form, etc., is not comprehended, Mahamati, the system of the five consciousnesses, Vijnanas, comes to function. Along with this system of the five Vijnanas, there is what is known as Mano Vijnana, the thinking function of consciousness, whereby the objective world is distinguished and individual appearances are distinctly determined, and in this the physical body has its genesis. But the Mano Vijnana and other Vijnanas have no thought that they are mutually conditioned, and that they grow out of their attachment to the discrimination which is applied to the projections of mind itself. Thus the Vijnanas go on functioning mutually related in a most intimate manner and discriminating a world of representations. As the Vijnanas thus go on functioning without being conscious of their own doings, so the yogins, while entering upon a state of tranquilization, samapati, are not aware of the workings of the subtle habit energy or memory within themselves, for they think that they would enter upon a state of tranquilization by extinguishing the vijnanas, but in fact they are in this state without extinguishing the vijnanas, which still subsist because the seeds of habit energy have not been extinguished, and what they imagine to be an extinction is really the non-functioning of the external world to which they are no more attached. So it is, Mahamati, with the subtle working of the alaya vijnana, which, except for the Tathagata and those bodhisattvas who are established on the stages, is not easy to comprehend, especially by those who practice the discipline belonging to the Sravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and philosophers. Even with their powers of samadhi and transcendental knowledge, it is difficult to distinguish. Only those who, understanding fully all the aspects of the different stages of bodhisattvahood by the aid of their transcendental knowledge, acquiring a definite cognition as regards the means of the separate propositions, planting roots of goodness in Buddha lands that know no limits, and keeping themselves away from the discriminations and false reasonings that arise from recognizing an external world which is of mind itself, would retire into a secluded abode in the forest and devote themselves to the practice of the spiritual discipline, either high or low or middling. Only those are capable of obtaining an insight into the flowing of mind itself in a world of discrimination, of being baptized by the Buddhas living in lands without limits, and of realizing the self-control, powers, psychic faculties, and samadhis. Surrounded by good friends and the Buddhas, Mahamati, they are capable of knowing the Shita, Manas, Manavijnana, which are the discriminating agents of an external world whose self-nature is of mind itself. They are capable of crossing the ocean of birth and death, which arises by reason of deed, desire, and ignorance. For this reason, Mahamati, the yogins ought to exercise themselves in the discipline which has been given them by their good friends and the Buddhas. At that time, the Bhagavan recited the following verses. Like waves that rise on the ocean, stirred by the wind, dancing and without interruption, the alaya ocean, in a similar manner, is constantly stirred by the winds of objectivity, and is seen dancing about with the vijnanas, which are the waves of multiplicity. Dark blue, red, and other colors with salt, conch shell, milk, honey, fragrance of fruits and flowers, and rays of sunlight. They are neither different nor not different. The relation is like that between the ocean and its waves. So are the 7 vijnanas joined with the Shita mind. As the waves in their variety are stirred on the ocean, so in the alaya is produced the variety of what is known as the vijnanas. The Sita, Manas, and Vijnanas are discriminated as regards their form, but as substance the 8 are not to be separated one from another, for there is neither qualified nor qualifying. As there is no distinction between the ocean and its waves, so in the Sita there is no evolution of the Vijnanas. Karma is accumulated by the Sita, reflected upon by the Manas, and recognized by the Mano Vijnana, and the visible world is discriminated by the 5 Vijnanas. Varieties of color, such as dark blue, etc., are presented to our Vijnana. Tell me, great Muni, how there are these various varieties of color like waves on the ocean? There are no such varieties of color in the waves. It is for the sake of the simple-minded that the Sita is said to be evolving as regards form. There is no such evolving in the Sita itself which is beyond comprehension. Where there is comprehension, there is that which comprehends, as in the case of waves and ocean. Body, property, and abode are presented as such to our Vijnanas, and thus they are seen as evolving in the same way as are the waves. The ocean is manifestly seen dancing in the state of waveness. How is it that the evolving of the alaya is not recognized by the intellect even as the ocean is? That the alaya is compared to the ocean is only for the sake of the discriminating intellect of the ignorant. The likeness of the waves in motion is only brought out by way of illustration. When the sun rises, it shines impartially on people high and low. So thou who art the light of the world shouldst announce the truth, tattvam, to the ignorant. How is it that, in establishing thyself in the Dharma, thou announcest not the truth? If the truth is announced by me, the truth is not in the mind. As the waves appear instantly on the ocean, or images in a mirror or a dream, so the mind is reflected in its own sense fields. Owing to a deficiency in conditions, the evolution of the Vijnanas takes place by degrees. The function of the Mano Vijnana is to recognize, and that of the Manas is to reflect upon. While to the 5 Vijnanas the actual world presents itself. There is no gradation when one is in the state of collectedness, samahita, like unto a master of painting or his pupils. who arrange colors to produce a picture, I teach. The picture is not in the colors, nor in the canvas, nor in the plate. In order to make it attractive to all beings, a picture is presented in colors. What one teaches transgresses, for the truth, tattva, is beyond words. Establishing myself in the Dharma, I preach the truth for the yogins. The truth is the state of self-realization and is beyond categories of discrimination. I teach it to the sons of the victorious. The teaching is not meant for the ignorant. What is seen as multitudinous is a vision which exists not. The teaching is thus variously given, subject to transgression. The teaching is no teaching whatever, if it is not to the point in each case. According to the nature of a disease, the healer gives its medicine. Even so, the Buddhas teach beings in accordance with their mentalities. This is indeed not a mental realm to be reached by the philosophers and the Sravakas. What is taught by the leaders is the realm of self-realization. Further, Mahamati, if the Bodhisattva should wish to understand fully that an external world to be subsumed under categories of discrimination, such as the grasping subject and the grasped object, is of mind itself, let him be kept away from such hindrances as turmoil, social intercourse, and sleep. Let him be kept away from the treatises and writings of the philosophers, from things belonging to the vehicles of Sravakahood and Pratyekabuddhahood. Let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva be thoroughly acquainted with objects of discrimination which are to be seen as of mind itself. Further, Mahamati, when the Bodhisattva Mahasattva establishes himself in the abode where he has gained a thorough understanding of mind, by means of his transcendental knowledge, he should later discipline himself in the cultivation of noble wisdom in its triple aspect. What are the three aspects of noble wisdom, Mahamati, in which he has to discipline himself later? They are 1. Imagelessness, 2. The power added by all the Buddhas by reason of their original vows, and 3. The self-realization attained by noble wisdom. Having mastered them, the yogin should abandon his knowledge of mind gained by means of transcendental wisdom, which still resembles a lame donkey, and entering upon the 8th stage of bodhisattvahood, he should further discipline himself in these three aspects of noble wisdom. Then again, Mahamati, the aspect of imagelessness comes forth when all things belonging to the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas and philosophers are thoroughly mastered. Again, Mahamati, as to the power added, it comes from the original vows made by all the Buddhas. Again, Mahamati, as to the self-realization aspect of noble wisdom, it rises when a bodhisattva, detaching himself from viewing all things in their phenomenality, realizes the samadhi body, where he surveys the world as like unto a vision, and further goes on to the attainment of the Buddha stage. Mahamati, this is the triplicity of the noble life. Furnished with this triplicity, noble ones will attain the state of self-realization, which is the outcome of noble wisdom. For this reason, Mahamati, you should cultivate noble wisdom in its triple aspect. At that moment, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, knowing what was going on in the minds of the Bodhisattvas who were gathered there, and empowered by the power added to him by all the Buddhas, asked the Bhagavan concerning the doctrine known as examining into the reality of noble wisdom. Tell me, Bhagavan, the doctrine of examining into the reality of noble wisdom, depending on which the 108 statements are to be distinguished, the doctrine depending on which the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, will analyze and disclose the nature and course of false imagination for the sake of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas who have fallen into the way of looking at things from their aspects of generality and individuality. Thus the Bodhisattvas will be instructed in the analysis and thorough examination of false imagination, and thereby they will have the passage purified which leads to the egolessness of things and persons, and get an illumination on the stages of bodhisattvahood, and further, going beyond the bliss of the tranquilizations belonging to all the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, will attain the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata, which belongs to the realm and course of Tathagatahood, transcending thought, and in which there is no rising of the 5 dharmas. That is to say, they will attain the Tathagata body, which is the Dharma intimately bound up with the understanding born of transcendental knowledge, and which, entering into the realm of Maya, reaches all the Buddha lands, the heavenly mansions of Tushita, and the abode of the Akandista. Said the Bhagavan, Mahamati, there are some philosophers who are addicted to negativism, according to whose philosophical view the non-existence of the hare's horns is ascertained by means of the discriminating intellect, which affirms that the self-nature of things ceases to exist with the destruction of their causes, and they say that all things are non-existent just like the hare's horns. Again, Mahamati, there are others who, seeing distinctions are existing in things as regards the elements, qualities, atoms, substances, formations, and positions, and attach to the notions that the hare's horns are non-existent, assert that the bull has horns. There are, Mahamati, those who have fallen into the dualistic way of thinking, being unable to comprehend the truth of mind only. They desire to discriminate a world which is of mind itself. Mahamati, body, property, and abode have their existence only when measured in discrimination. The hare's horns neither are nor are not. No discrimination is to be made about them. So it is, Mahamati, with all things, of which neither being nor non-being can be predicated. Have no discrimination about them. Again, Mahamati, those who have gone beyond being and non-being no more cherish the thought that the hare has no horns, for they never think that the hare has no horns because of mutual reference, nor do they think that the bull has horns because no ultimate substance is to be obtained, however minutely the analysis of the horns may go on, even to the subtlest particle known as atom. That is, the state in which noble wisdom is realized is beyond being and non-being. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. Is it not this way, Bhagavan, that, seeing how discrimination takes place, we proceed to refer this to the non-arising of discrimination and infer that the horns exist not? The Bhagavan said, No, indeed, Mahamati, the non-existence of the horns has no reference to the non-arising of discrimination. Why is it not so? Because there is discrimination owing to the idea of the horns. Indeed, depending on the idea of the horns, Mahamati, discrimination takes place, and because of this dependence of discrimination upon the idea of the horns, Mahamati, and because of this relationship of dependence and apart from the anaya relationship, one talks of the non-existence of the hare's horns, surely not because of the reference to the horns of the bull. If again, Mahamati, discrimination is different, anya, from the hare's horns, it will not take place by reason of the horns, and therefore the one is not different from the other. But if it is not different, ananya, there is no a discrimination taking place by reason of the horns, and therefore the one is different from the other. However minutely the atoms are analyzed, no horn substance is attainable. The notion of the horns itself is not available when thus reasoned, as neither of them, that is, the bull nor the hares, are existent. In reference to what should we talk of non-existence? Therefore, Mahamati, the reasoning by reference as regards the non-existence of the hare's horns is of no avail. The non-existence of the hare's horns is asserted in reference to their existence on the bull, but really a horn itself has no existence from the beginning. Have therefore no discrimination about it. Mahamati, the dualism of being and non-being, as held by the philosophers, does not obtain, as we see in the reasoning of horns. Again, Mahamati, there are other philosophers affected with erroneous views, who are attached to such notions as form, cause, and figure, not fully understanding the nature of space, and seeing that space is disjoined from form, they proceed to discriminate about their separate existences. But Mahamati, space is form, and Mahamati, as space penetrates into form, form is space. To establish the relation of supporting and supported, Mahamati, there obtains the separation of the two, space and form. Mahamati, when the elements begin to evolve a world, they are distinguishable from one another. They do not abide in space, and space is not non-existent in them. It is the same with the hare's horns, Mahamati, whose non-existence is asserted in reference to the bull's horns. But Mahamati, when the bull's horns are analyzed to their minutest atoms, which in turn are further analyzed, there is after all nothing to be known as atoms. The non-existence of what is to be affirmed in reference to what. As to the other things too, this reasoning from reference does not hold true. At that time the Bhagavan said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Mahamati, you should discard the views and discriminations that are concerned with the horns of a hare and a bull, with space and form. And also, Mahamati, let you and other bodhisattvas reflect on the nature of discrimination which they have of the mind itself, and let them go into all the bodhisattva lands where they should disclose the way of disciplining themselves in the manifestations of mind itself. Then at that time the Bhagavan recited these verses. The world as we see it exists not. Pluralities of things rise from the mind being seen externally. Body, property, and abode are manifested to us as of the alaya vijnana. The leaders talk about the sita, manas, mano-vijnana, the triples, svabhava, the five dharmas, the twofold egolessness and purification. Long and short, etc., exist mutually bound up. When the existence is asserted, there is non-existence. Where a non-existence is asserted, there is existence. Analyzed down to atoms, there is indeed no form to be discriminated as such. What can be established is the truth of mind only, which is not believed by those who cherish erroneous views. This does not belong to the realm of the theoreticians, nor to that of the Sravaka. The Buddhas disclosed the way of self-realization. At that time again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, made a request of the Bhagavan regarding the purification of the outflow which comes from recognizing an objective world which is of mind itself, saying, "How, O Bhagavan, is the outflow purified that takes place from recognizing an external world which is of mind itself? Is the purification instantaneous or gradual?" Replied the Bhagavan, "The outflow that takes place from recognizing an external world which is of mind itself is gradually purified and not instantaneously. Mahamati, it is like the amra fruit which ripens gradually and not instantaneously. In the same way, Mahamati, the purification of beings is gradual and not instantaneous. Mahamati, it is like the potter making pots which is done gradually and not instantaneously. In the same way, Mahamati, the purification of beings by the Tathagata is gradual and not instantaneous. Mahamati, it is like grass, shrubs, herbs, and trees that grow up gradually from the earth and not instantaneously. In the same way, Mahamati, the purification by the Tathagata of beings is gradual and not instantaneous. Mahamati, it is like the mastery of comedy, dancing, singing, music, lute playing, writing, and other arts, which is gained gradually and not instantaneously. In the same way, Mahamati, the purification by the Tathagata of all beings is gradual and not instantaneous."